Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Tola Talks. This is number 201. It's November 5th. All right, what do we have? What do we have yesterday? I want to give a congrats to all the Democrats out there. You guys know I'm an independent. Do not choose sides here. I choose those that I like. Okay, I didn't really vote because I wasn't in New Jersey or Virginia, but congrats to the two women elected to the governorship, Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger. And kudos to the new mayor of New York City. I hope they do well over there, Mamdani. And, I lived in New York for about 15 years. Love it. I always love Manhattan. So congrats. Hope you guys get off to a great start. And I hope you do what you say. We're going to be talking about that today because New Jersey is my home state. You guys know that, right? Grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. And the utility costs are no doubt through the roof. So, Mikey, I hope you do what you say. I mean, we lived in at 1363. I know that exactly because we sold the house that my parents bought, 65 years ago when my parents passed away, sold the house. We were spending $250 a month for just the gas and electric. So PSC&G making a fortune off of us. Hopefully you could bring those down. More importantly, I hope you could clean up. And when I say clean up, the city of Trenton, and, she made a comment about Chitterelli being the Trump of Trenton. Well, let me tell you something. She's not from Trenton. I know that. I think Mikey's from Alexandria, Virginia, but she was in the 11th Congressional District, which is up there in Suffolk County, which is not Mercer County. And I'll tell you, anybody who knows anything about the city of Trenton knows that that's not a clean city, and I wouldn't say it's a safe city. We're going to talk about safety, but for me, the two most important things that you could provide to a citizen is cleanliness and safety, without a doubt. That's the two most important things for me to live anywhere. Okay, you want to have it clean and you want to be safe, and they go hand in hand. They really do. Hey, anybody driving up Greenwood Avenue, you guys know this, coming from Hamilton, going into Trenton, there's a sign. As soon as you cross over the border there, it says Historic Capital City of Trenton. Well, guess what? There's garbage all over the place. And let me tell you, it's very unfortunate, but hope you could do a good job of doing that. Beautiful governor's mansion there in Princeton, right up the road. But speaking of safety, we're jumping right into this with the Gallup poll. You guys know I love Gallup polls. And there was a Gallup poll that just came out, a day or two ago. Fear of walking alone at night in the United States. It says that 31% of people are afraid of walking 1 mile of their homes at night. They say 27% of the world doesn't feel safe walking alone at night, which happens to be a 20-year low. But let me tell you, these are the 21 cities that I've lived in. And when I say lived in, that means 3 months or more since 1985. 1985, I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, came out of Philly. Times are very different then. And here we are. I lived in Indianapolis, my current city, Trenton, New Jersey. They lived downtown Trenton, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Plano, Texas, and Frisco, Burbank, California, Los Angeles, Chicago, Seattle, Las Vegas twice, Santa Monica, La Jolla, California, one of my favorite cities, Bushwick, New York, Manhattan as well, 15 years, Philadelphia, Evanston, Illinois, where I went to Northwestern, Honolulu, San Francisco, Denver, Ocala, Florida. Believe it or not, I spent 3 months there before I moved back, take care of my parents, and Princeton, New Jersey. Now, add to that Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. That's 24 cities in the past 40 years. I spent 3 months or more, okay? Out of those 21, forget about Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. They don't count. Let's look at this. These are 7 cities where I felt comfortable walking a mile at night. First of all, in the city of Trenton, you don't feel comfortable walking a mile in the middle of the day. But speaking of these cities, these are my 7 cities. Austin, Texas. Yeah, I lived on 6th Street. Could walk a mile anywhere. Burbank, California. Burbank, no doubt. Burbank is not Los Angeles, guys. That's its own police force. It's totally different. Felt safe there. Felt safe in Santa Monica, although a lot of homeless in Santa Monica. So you go near the beach at night, a little bit dicey. La Jolla, California. Forget La Jolla to me is gorgeous. One of the best cities. Manhattan, believe it or not, I lived on 81st and First, so walking a mile was no big deal in Manhattan. So kudos to Manhattan. Evanston, Illinois, felt safe there. Always felt safe at school. And Princeton, New Jersey. Again, Austin, Burbank, Santa Monica, La Jolla, Manhattan, Evanston, and Princeton. The rest of those cities, I will say, including Indianapolis, I don't feel comfortable walking a mile at night. Not in the darkness. No, not going to do it. So, hey, I hope the world gets better, at least in the United States, for making people feel safe and clean. And the good news is, from this Gallup poll, is the perception of crime has gone down. They say 30% of people say crime is worse than it was a year ago. So that's a good news, because when it comes to crime, it's all about defiance and disrespect, which we'll talk about that in a minute. Defiance and disrespect, which I experienced a lot of when I was teaching, substitute teaching in these schools, inner city. But hey, kudos to California for their Proposition 50. I guess it's a kudos. It was a landslide win. You guys know what that's about. Gerrymandering, aka cheating. I guess that's another word for it. But let me do this. I looked up the word gerrymandering. I always like to look up words. It's a noun, and it says the manipulation of an electoral constituency's boundaries so as to favor one party or class. So we know that. We know there's been gerrymandering, right? Texas, California, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio. Again, if you ask me, that's another word for cheating. But where'd the word come from? All right, it's an early 19th century word. It comes from the name of Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts and salamander. It's a cross between those words from the supposed similarity between a salamander, the shape of a salamander, and of a new voting district on a map drawn when he was in office in 1812. All right, is the creation of which was to favor his party. So they added claws, wings, fangs, and they made it look like a salamander. So gerrymandering comes from the mashing of those two words. All right, so talk about words, right? Let me jump into this, because words, I believe words which have been around, they say, for anywhere from 50 to 150,000 years, right? The arrival of modern humans, most people will say it was 135 years ago that language has been around. Some will argue 500,000 years ago. Yeah, who knows? Go look up ChatGPT. But to me, there's words are two sides of the same coin, right? On the one side, they're impactful, they're powerful, and they could also be very hurtful. But on the other side, words are meaningless. Because what does it mean to just spew words, right? It's not about the words, it's what's behind the words in terms of actions, right? What about this in the fitness world? Talk to any gym owner. They're going to tell you at the beginning of the year, everybody, the memberships go skyrocketing because everybody says, oh, yeah, I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna start working out. Daily fitness program, which I've been preaching for the last 45 years, right? But careful what you say, because you can't take words back, especially the written word. And what I like so much about this Tola Talks this time around, you guys know in the last episode, I said we started in 2014, but I'll tell you, I was on the radio. I did a radio show out in Long Island. I forget what school it was. This was 2006, and that's when I first got the bug of being on the radio. What I love about it is live. You can't take the words back. So, hey, you got to say it. You got to live behind it, stand up behind it. And to quote my dad, rest in peace, that Richie the barber, he was a classic. Everybody knows him. Before there was Google, there was Richie, as one of his best friends said. But he would always say this to me. Always, always. He said, listen, kid, the spoken word is your master. The unspoken word is your slave. So if you haven't, I'm sorry, repeat that. The unspoken word is your master. Here we go, live. The unspoken word. So no, I think I got that right. If you haven't spoken the word, you control it, right? The spoken word becomes your master because you spoke the word. Again, this is coming from my dad, old school Sicilian dude, barber. Spoken word, your master. Unspoken word is your slave. So be careful what you speak. And if you do speak it, you got to live up behind it, because I know this for a fact. Another person said this to me. The word said and done. Much is said, but little is done. So do what you say, guys, no matter what. If you're going to use these words, do what you say. And speaking of words, let me give a shout out to this reader review. Sneha did a review of my book, The Sub. And here's what she wrote. Let me read it to you. She said, so, ever wondered what really goes down in an inner city classroom? The Sub by Rich Tola gives you the front row seat you didn't know you needed. Based on his real life experience as a K through 12 substitute teacher, it's equal parts chaos, heart, and straight up truth bombs. The Sub who's seen it all: school lockdowns, kid dropping F-bombs, fights in the hallway, and even a middle school girl gang. Yep, that's a thing. But instead of running for the hills, he shows up every day with humor, heart, and some seriously fresh ideas to fix a broken system. What makes this book hit different is how it balances gritty and feel good. It's brutally real about burnout, bad curriculums, and struggling schools, yet still finds hope in small wins like breakthroughs with autistic kids, unexpected connections. Rich Tola gives you the messy, loud, unpredictable reality of teaching, but also the moments that make it all worth it. You'll laugh, maybe tear up a little, and definitely walk away with a whole new respect for teachers everywhere. And you truly will, guys. You're going to read this book, right? If you read this book, The Sub, you're going to have a whole new respect for teachers, what we do, the shit that we put up with. Because let me talk about this, right? The last three chapters, I gave you a shout out to my buddy John over here. John called me up and he said, I read your book. He said, the last three chapters, great. Because the last three chapters, I give you solutions to the problems with these inner city schools, which are rough. I'm telling you. Let me tell you something. I talk about eat, pray, sub. I mean, it's true. To go and teach in these schools can be quite difficult. But this is chapter 12. It's called It Takes a Village. I give a shout out to Hillary Clinton in this book too, because it does take a village to teach and impact these children in a positive way. All right, let me read you this, because you know how many times the words defiant and disrespect come into play? Many, many, many times. And it's heartbreaking. Here we go. Here's my recommendation for addressing the chronic issues of defiance and disrespect: a one-page rules and consequences agreement between each student and their respective schools, to be mutually agreed upon and signed by them, their parents or guardians, and their principal. This would establish a baseline for self-discipline and remove any confusion as to the breaking of the rules and how each one would be treated. This would also make it easier to deal with infractions more quickly and efficiently if and when they occur. Plus, the agreement can be used to reward everyone with a perfect record who never breaks the rules. Guys, it's really simple. I mean, I taught at a school, I think it was ninth grade, and it was the last day of school, and I'll never forget, we're in the hallway. I got to know a lot of kids, and they're coming up. Everybody's high-fiving. They're all really happy. They're going out for the summer, and the principal's like walking around, and I said, hey, guys, you got to get back to your class. They're like, class bell rang, and they're like, got to get back to your class. It's the principal. They're like, what principal? Who's the principal? They didn't know who the principal was. They had never seen the principal. Not one time. I don't know if she came out of her office, and that's in the book. Because you have to make it known to create an element of respect. You got to create rules and consequences, because nobody's accountable. It's like these politicians, right? All I know is I'm an independent. You guys know that. I'm right. I straddle the line. Okay. I love when politicians are effective, not ineffective. Forget about the words, forget about going sideways. Go forward, make a statement, stand behind it, make change. So I hope you do that. The Democrats that are winning, kudos, but stand behind your words, okay? Don't just make excuses for why things don't happen. So, hey, congratulations, New Jersey, Virginia, New York City. Hope you get off to a great start. And again, live up to the words that you speak, and remember, speak wisely. All right, guys, that's it for today. By the way, Friday, I got to have a guest on my show. Give a shout out to Ed Winslow. He wrote a book called Proof Stacking, has a website, proofstacking.ai. Guys, check it out. Some really good stuff. We're going to be interviewing Ed. I've known him for 30 years, and a lot of great stuff, especially if you have a business, or if you're in the real estate business in particular, you're going to want to watch that show. So Have a great day. And as always,